Hello. My wife tells me that I've lost some jollity and must change. And of course, she's right. And in October's magazine, I will jolly up. I'll promise the readers I'm going to jolly up. But for now, I am, in fact, a bit down in the dumps at this unholy mess we see around us and we read about every day. And unfortunately, unholy is not a metaphor. I think it's real. It's what happens when humans think too highly of themselves and create their own gods. G.K. Chesterton in the 1930s saw it coming when he said, "When a man stops believing in God, he doesn't then believe in nothing, he believes in anything." Today, that anything includes the belief that humanity by itself is capable of being and creating anything it wants. I think this is a 10 out of 10 for arrogance and 0 for humility. But it does explain why ordinary people do not think that governing elites in academia and media and in the bureaucracy can stop the rot. Things must change. And St. John Henry Newman reminds us when he wrote that in the higher world it is otherwise, but here below, to live is to change, and to be perfect is to have changed often. Perfection should be our aim, and in listening to others, I won't suggest specific things to do, but here are 3 areas in which, as I see it, change can occur. I'll interject by saying the perfection that I think is seen by our media, academic, governing and bureaucratic elites is a sort of perfection, but it's not the perfection, not the highest conceivable perfections that they're striving for. They've replaced the highest conceivable perfections by lesser objectives. We need to go back to Aristotle for a basic discussion of that. I could but won't. But the Old Testament talks about the highest possible good being achieved when we aim for, if not succeed, we aim for the highest, which is the perfection surrounding, which is the nature, the purity, the perfection, which is the being of God. That's the highest possible, unachievable, no doubt. But by aiming for less that we think we can achieve, we put resources and energies into something which is not the best. Anyway, perfection should be our aim, I think. And in listening to others, I won't suggest to readers specific things to do, but here are 3 areas in which, as a nation, I think, we can change. And ordinary people can involve themselves in these 3 areas. And those 3 areas, which frankly, I got from listening to something the Pope said, the new Pope, Leo XIV. And that's truth, service, and intercession. Truth as an absolute. Now, in philosophy and theology, absolutes, truth is a point of highest value, such as the first commandment given to Moses. And this serves then as a fixed standard against which other standards can be ranked. Likewise, in engineering, one such standard is an authenticated metal ruler. This is an easy one for non-engineers to perceive, against which all the graduations and the total length are validated. So we can say that this ruler this ruler will say. It's not obviously that accurate, this sort of ruler. But we can say, we can look for the 1 meter mark, 100 mil, and know that to all practical intents and purposes, that 100 mil is the same as the 100 mil on the standard ruler kept somewhere in an engineering department in the university. So this 1 meter can be validated against a absolute standard. But truth is commonly now assumed to be relative. That goes back to the 1960s. Relative to anything you want to compare it with. For example, a phrase that's commonly used by celebrities, my truth. So we hear celebrities and even royal celebrities saying, oh, this is the truth as I perceive it. But we've got that concept now of a relative truth now embodied into British law. Criminal courts are obligated now, in some cases, not every, but in a vast number of cases, obligated to accept one person's perception of himself as a victim over those of another, classed by law as the accused. This is before trial, by the way. This arises because of criteria fixed by the concept of protected characteristics of the victim. Some are obvious, for example, disability, colour, race, less so, but possible. So under the protected characteristics of the victim, the accused is this disadvantage by assumptions written into the general laws and is assumed guilty prior to trial, having then to prove his innocence. And that's quite contrary to anything in English law. This rhetoric, logic, will eventually lead, and is already doing so, to other groups and individuals wanting legal status for their own characteristics, thus compelling others to see them as they are themselves. Objective truth will then disappear, and without truth and trust, society simply cannot function. So it's what we might call developing chaos, but chaos at the moment, and it will continue to develop until eventually society will collapse, unless this silliness, I call it categories from philosophy, where it stops. Service to others, which is the second of these two, is not a choice for us, but is existential. Because we are spiritual creatures with immortal souls in an earthly body. We are here to love and serve our neighbours. But of course, we are egocentric and self-centered. But how now, in my life, I don't think I've seen narcissism on a scale that it is now. And that's aided by advertising, for example, which tells us that paint ourselves with this, put this on, do this. We can be anything we want to be. And so we live in a world of I, not A-Y-E, but me. And intercessionary prayer. And I think this is an area which, again, we as ordinary folk can sort of do useful things. It's more than a list of what we want. It's an access route to heavenly powers. And so prayer, in full alignment with God's purposes, will receive an immediate response. Tell God the truth, he'll gain nothing from your words of truth, but you will. How can he gain anything? He's omniscient, he's omnipresent, he knows everything. So tell him the truth, not for his sake, but for your own, because only then can the forces of heaven collaborate with you in truth. Prayer, according to C.S. Lewis, is of course also essential to counter the demonic forces which nowadays we tended to write off as, well, just being mythological, forgetting that myths, of course, contain truths, understandable in accordance with the knowledge that we have gained, has been revealed to us over the centuries, but truth nevertheless. And so I think there is such a thing as demonic forces. And C.S. Lewis points out the ways in which they try to stop us attaining the holiness that will allow us to be back with God as Adam was originally. Diversion, for example. Think of something else. Do something else. Clever stuff such as disguising an evil with a good idea or good intentions. And the road to hell, we used to say, is paved with good intentions. And I think many of the things that are being done today, which are not leading us in the right direction, they're leading us to lie and tell untruths or misrepresent facts, and generally to treat facts with disdain because it's my truth, you see, and it's unsuitable, not the right thing to say for me. So we're into PR and media manipulation and so on. So that's the demonic forces at work there, I think. And to conclude this little article in the magazine, most of us, especially Protestants, see ourselves as earthly beings with an attached mortal soul. Now, to atheists, of course, there is no soul. We're just chemical and electrical activity, and when the heart stops, our body decays to its base elements. I think when I was at school 60, 70, 80 years ago, we were taught something about that the human body is just a bucket full of water with some charcoal and a few other things. And so that particular teacher had distilled it down to a bucket full of stuff, that says. And I can see a galvanized bucket with somebody's contents in it, as it were, and that's all we are to the atheist. However, I come at it slightly differently. I now come to see us as spiritual beings with an integrated immortal soul, temporarily in an earthly body. And that's what Adam was. He was a spiritual being with an integrated immortal soul, temporarily in an earthly body. Previous to the fall, he had, of course, been a spiritual being with an integrated soul, but as a spiritual being and a soul full. However, whichever view you have of our bodies, soul and mind, we do have a lifetime to become holy, as was Jesus, and so able to join him in that transcendental world we call heaven. John Henry Newman, who became a saint in 2019, wrote in his book Lead Kindly Light, I think it was a book of meditations that I read recently. Time is short, eternity is long. Put not from yourself what you have here found. Wrap not yourself round in the association of years past, nor determine that to be truth which you wish it to be, nor make an idol of cherished anticipation. Time is short, he says, eternity is long. Thank you for watching. please subscribe and tick the like box.